Michigan Speedway here at Brooklyn, southeastern Michigan, the Irish Hills region. Let's take a look at the track. A 2-mile oval with very high speeds, some pretty high banking as well.
Yes, indeed. Fast speeds. They're going to turn one. You can see 233 miles an hour into turn one. There'll be more than that, though, with the slipstream. Often we've seen speeds yesterday of over 245 miles an hour going into turn one. That's how much of a draft these cars can create. It's amazing to watch.
We are expecting to see a huge amount of overtaking here. You ride on board at the moment with Alex Zanardi. He starts on the 4th row of the grid. He's in 7th position. Alongside him will be Michel Andretti. Just to remind you, it's Adrian Fernandez, Jimmy Vasser on the front row. Richie Hearn and Alonso Jr. on the 2nd row. Brian Herter and Scott Pruitt on the 3rd row. Then Zanardi and Andretti. Behind them, Christian Fittipaldi and Gilles de Ferran. Andre Ribeiro and Bobby Rahal on row 6. On row 7, JJ Leto, the top rookie, and Greg Moore. Row 8, Paul Tracy and Dario Franchitti. Row 9, Maurizio Guterman and Art Meyer. The 10th row, Mark Blundell and Tony Kanaan. 11th, Patrick Carpentier and Max Papis. Then Robbie Gordon and Helio Castroneves. And the last 2 rows, Dennis Vitolo and Michel Jourdain, and PJ Jones and Alex Barrett. We are getting ready for the start of 250 laps of this 2-mile track. It's a long way to go. More like a sports car race in some ways in terms of the mentality required.
Yeah, the concentration here is so intense at these sort of speeds, and it's mentally draining on the drivers as well as physically demanding for the cars as well. And here we are coming up, nicely spaced between the cars here, and we're coming up for the green flag.
Here we go then, the start of the US 500 of 1998 is Fernandez and Vasser on the front row together as they begin to pick up some speed and go down into turn one for the first time. A bit of bunching behind. Looks like Greg Moore or Patrick Carpentier dropping back. Think it could have been Greg Moore, and a very slow getaway. Looked as though he had problems. Up front it's Jimmy Vasser with the initial advantage as the rest of the field files through the first couple of corners. And now look at Alonso Jr. He started on the 2nd row. He was practicing his drafting. Look at that, how close 3 cars are there as they go through turn 3 and 4. JJ Leto down on the inside, as up front Alonso Jr. comes around to complete the first lap. It's Jr. who just has the advantage, but Jimmy Vasser comes back at him as they go down into turn number 1. A frantic start already, just as we expected, and on board now with Michel Andretti, who runs right behind the leaders. He's picking up the toe now from Jimmy Vasser, and Andretti tries to go to the inside as Vasser picks up the toe, and it's almost 3 abreast into turn number 3. Well, we expected some good racing, and boy, we're seeing it already.
Unbelievable stuff. A very slow start though by Adrian Fernandez, and that allowed a certain amount of bunching of the pack in the midfield, and the guys did a good job back there to avoid some accidents because it was awfully close. Look at that, 3 abreast into turn 1. Michel Andretti on the inside line, Jimmy Vasser on the outside, side by side through 1 and 2.
Just remember, they're cornering at speeds of 230 miles an hour. This is incredible as they run side by side through 1 and 2 on the back stretch now. And watch out, as up behind them comes Gilles de Ferran in the blue and white car. He's joining into this lead pack as well. Let me tell you that it was Patrick Carpentier who dropped away at the start of the race. It wasn't Greg Moore. Moore still runs in 14th position, but for Patrick Carpentier, a disastrous start. Meanwhile, back with the leaders, Michel Andretti. You're on board with Michael in 3rd place now as Jimmy Vasser retakes the lead of this race from Al Unser Jr. You've got 3 Americans up there, more experienced to driving on the ovals than the Europeans or the Brazilians, and they're showing them how to do it at the moment. Alonso Jr. goes back ahead in the Penske, and a great performance this from Little Al. Welcome back to our coverage of the US 500. On board with Michel Andretti. Problems with the setting of the speed limit button on that car, and they're looking to perhaps change the steering wheel, because when he came in last time, as you may have heard on the radio, he said his pit lane speed limiter was not working. He's been experimenting with it under this caution period behind the pace car. It's still not working. It's still not making the engine cut out to keep to that 60 miles an hour, and they are thinking perhaps of changing the steering wheel. That it is an electronic problem, and of course all the connections into the back of the steering wheel. He hits the button on the steering wheel, which brings that speed limiter into effect, and that's what they're thinking about doing. Now, whether they will decide to make that change before the next round of pit stops, we'll have to see. Meanwhile, Greg Moore has had all sorts of problems out on the track. Let's go down and hear from PJ Jones
You were having
first.
more problems than that, weren't you?
Yeah, something must have happened to the car, because we had a perfect car this morning and no understeer, nothing. We ended up putting like 10 turns of front wing on it, and the thing's still understeering. So we must have a shock or something going bad, and it's too disappointing, because I thought we could come out of here maybe with some points, and you know, we seem to do well in these type of races, and I like the ovals. And you know, I'm just really disappointed for the whole Toyota Castrol Degree team. I mean, they worked hard, and, you know, we've been struggling the last couple races, but I'm sure we'll get it turned around.
And Jack, in a way, he said it was a relief. It kind of put him out of his misery. It was a scary car to drive.
So P.J. Jones now sits and watches to see what develops throughout this race. I don't think he's going to go anywhere. He wants to see exactly what's happening. Meanwhile, Paul Tracy is our race leader. Jeremy, a pretty impressive pit stop from the crew there.
Sensational. He came into the pits in 7th position and goes out of the pits in 1st position. Meanwhile, there is the car of Greg Moore, the blue car there ahead of Michel Jourdain Jr. And as he came past us a couple of laps ago, after making his pit stop, he was running very, very slowly indeed, actually stalled the car, and without a clutch, that was a bit of a problem. He did manage to get it into gear and started it, and he is now back underway again, but he's fallen again. He was in the lead before that pit stop. He is now in 9th.
Well, there is the spare steering wheel that they're getting ready for Michael Andretti. That button on the left that we're looking at is the one that operates the pit lane speed limiter. And you see the drivers working that. You can see Michael's been working that out on the track to try and see if he can get it to work again. It hasn't worked, so they're going to have to be awfully careful on the next stop. That's why Michael was passed by a few cars in the pit lane. Sensibly, he decided to go slower than everybody else just to make sure of not picking up a penalty. Well, just one of the problems that can occur.
Yeah, if they were thinking about coming in there, they'll rethink that one, because we're now going back to green again as Paul Tracy gets a very good jump, and there is Brian Herder in 2nd place, who did not make a pit stop under that sequence of stops, and in 2nd place now.
So away we go again. The green flag comes out, and Paul Tracy and Brian Herter battling side by side as they continue this race, which has seen so much passing, so much slipstreaming already. Gilles de Ferran in 3rd place. We've already seen some 24 lead changes. The record here is 28, and we're not even at half distance. We're very nearly at half distance, I have to say. Just a couple of laps away from the half distance mark as Brian Herter leads, with Paul Tracy in the green and white machine in 2nd place. Gilles de Ferran down on the inside is in 3rd, and then 4th position for Alonso Jr.
Yeah, he moved up ahead of Bobby Rahal at the restart. Richie Hearn, however, he fell from 10th to 13th. He's lost the draft. He's fallen way to the back of the pack coming up for that restart, so not quite sure what happened to Richie Hearn.
Tracy back in front again. De Ferran in 2nd. Watch out, Alonso Jr. looking to find a way past Brian Herter as these two get into a slipstreaming battle. Honda Power versus Honda Power. Goodyear tyres on De Ferran's car versus the Firestone tyres on Paul Tracy's. And Tracy, a long time since he's won a race, really since last year when he was still with the Penske team. He won 3 ovals in a row last year. His last win was at the Gateway track in St. Louis. We reached the halfway point. 125 laps are completed. The same number still to go. And Alex Zanardi's on the move as well.
Yeah, one is not on the move. Well, he actually is on the move now. J.J. Leto just came into the pits on that last lap, so he fell out of the draft there, back into 13th position.
Brian Herter struggling a little bit with his car in traffic. He's reporting on the radio. He says it runs fine in clean air, but once it gets into traffic, it runs a little loose, and that means he's dropped back behind Zanardi, and it's allowed Zanardi that chance to get up past him. Up front, though, Paul Tracy's car seems to be working well in traffic or not in traffic. He's opened up a little bit of an advantage over De Ferran. Then Unser in 3rd place, Zanardi now in 4th, Herter in 5th, then Michael Andretti in 6th, Bobby Rahal 7th, Adrian Fernandez in 8th place ahead of Greg Moore, Jimmy Vasser, and then Patrick Carpentier and Richie Hearn. So all still to play for, and Jimmy Vasser now, Jeremy, back on the lead lap, is he, after that situation? That's good news for him.
Yes, it is very good news. He didn't need to make another stop there, and of course he stays out on the racetrack. He's in 10th place behind Greg Moore, and we're watching there the leaders coming off turn 2. That is Paul Tracy, who's got back ahead of Gilles de Ferran. Gilles de Ferran doesn't like the idea of that and promptly repasses Paul Tracy into turn 3.
It's all changed. Alonso Jr. showing that this year's Penske is competitive in this sort of racing on the speedway. At least Roger Penske can be happy about that on his own track, although they've seen one car go out already, remember, with a CV joint failure. Andre Ribeiro didn't last very long. Alonso Jr. still there. Paul Tracy, ex-Penske driver, goes around Gilles de Ferran again to retake the lead of this race. So many lead changes already. Great fun to watch, and it's going to be like this, I think, pretty much all the way through to the end. There's Zanardi moving up, by the way. That's the battle for third. Little smoke there from Alonso Jr.'s car. Now, there have been reports of smoke from Alonso Jr. on and off throughout this race. Definite little puff of smoke from the back of his car there. Whether that's something to concern ourselves with, I think it's something to just keep an eye on for the moment. But surely if there's a bit of oil being burnt somewhere, it's not going to make the machine last too long in this long-distance event.
No, when they're certainly they don't run quite as many revs as they did in qualifying, but they're still around about 14,000 RPMs, and there around the outside this time goes Michel Jourdain into turn 3 to retake the lead from Paul Tracy.
Bobby Rahal also on the move. He's come up into 7th position. He's just got past teammate Brian Herter. And we go back on board with Michael Andretti now as Andretti comes up behind Alonso Jr. And 3 abreast up front as well. Fantastic racing. Just look at this. Andretti and Alonso Jr. side by side. Well, Andretti takes advantage of that slipstream. Just wait to watch Alonso Jr. do the same. Meanwhile, De Ferran has blasted past Paul Tracy again. Definitely a little smoke there from Little Al. And remember what happened to Andre Ribeiro. That was a CV joint failure. It could be something similar occurring on the Penske of Alonso Jr. Apparently the CART officials are keeping a very close eye on that smoke from the car. Obviously any trace of liquid being put down on track and an immediate black flag for the safety concerns of the other drivers out there. They cannot have somebody leaking oil or any other fluids for that matter onto the racetrack.
This battle for the lead, and Brian Herter, who was in the thick of it, has slipped all the way back now down to 9th position. So he's fallen back through that pack of cars. As we're watching us now is Gilles de Ferran's turn to lead. Obviously we're on board again with Michael Andretti in 3rd position and getting the draft here. Gilles de Ferran a sitting duck as Paul Tracy flies past him into turn 1, and Michael Andretti trying to follow suit on the inside line.
Good, clean racing so far. Not much room on the outside there. Andretti just gives De Ferran enough room up to the wall. Meanwhile, further back, Greg Moore fans down to the inside as he's in the battle with Adrian Fernandez for 6th position. Wonderful racing that we're watching here. And we've got something like the top 8, 9 cars all strung together at the moment. And here they go. Speeds as they cross the line. And we can see that Michael Andretti there with the fastest, and suitably enough, he goes back into the lead again. De Ferran there, just running side by side with Tracy for a moment, but Tracy has gone back into 2nd place. And look at this racing. This is what we wanted to see. This is what we hoped for with the Hanford wing being fitted to the back of these cars, this device to try and make the cars a little bit slower in terms of flat-out speed, try and reduce the speeds from those 240 miles an hour average laps that we saw at Fontana last year. Possibly even faster they would have been here without this new wing. And now the average speed's certainly down a bit to around 225. Pruitt loses out a little bit there as we ride on with Scott Pruitt a lap down, unfortunately. He lies in 13th position.
In case you're enjoying the action, there's plenty more to come. We've just got 134 laps down, so 116 still to go. Plenty of time for some good racing here. And side by side across the finish line, that time it's Paul Tracy has the advantage. Yet another change of lead. This is great stuff to watch.
It is amazing, and I don't quite know how you manage to keep a lap chart of all this, Jeremy, while this is going on. They keep changing, and the numbers keep changing on your lap chart, and the leader seems to be different every time around. Tracy now with the advantage over Michael Andretti. Andretti picks up the slipstream, goes back down the inside. Tracy stays with him around the outside. You'd think they were battling on the last lap of a race. We're still only just over halfway, and the two of them are, believe it or not, they are really thinking about looking after their cars, not using maximum revs too much all the time, running the higher top gear as much as they can, and thinking about fuel consumption. But you wouldn't think it to look at the racing.
It's great, isn't it? It really is good stuff. And all the way down the field it is as well. Some good battles farther back as well. And we're just breathless trying to keep up with it all. JJ Leto comes past here. He's more than almost 2/3 of a lap down after that pit stop right after we went green. He is 1 lap down back into 16th place. He really needs another caution to make up that ground again.
Fabulous, and it's just watching it on TV, sometimes you lose the impression of speed that these cars are going at. Let me just remind you again, they're averaging 225 miles an hour plus. They're up to 240 faulty at some areas on the straights, but certainly when they pick up a good tow, they're up to those sort of speeds across start-finish line. Unbelievable speed. And as you watch it on TV, just try and imagine yourself, here you are, watching the onboard camera with Gilles de Ferran, travelling at up to 235, 240 miles an hour as you move out of the slipstream of the car in front, just inches away. On the outside of you, you've got a concrete wall just inches away, and you've got to watch out for the marbles, the little bits of rubber. There goes Paul Tracy past Alex Zanardi again as the top four continue their battling.
And Paul Tracy, we hear getting the word from his crew, just be patient, don't need to run out front just yet. Particularly after the last couple of races, made a couple of mistakes, and he needs to have a good clean race this afternoon. He needs to get to the finish line. That is paramount importance to Paul Tracy. Certainly that is what Barry Green is thinking, the team owner there, and he's imploring Tracy, just take your time, be patient. Just stick around there, have some fun if you like, but don't extend anything at all, either yourself or the car. Meanwhile, Patrick Carpentier, teammate to Greg Moore, just made a pit stop under green. He fell a lap off the pace now. He's back in 14th and 1 lap behind.
Yes, just talking about Paul Tracy there, Jeremy. Great record on the ovals. He's always been a superb oval racer. There he is, still battling with Zanardi for third position as we go back on board the lead car. Gilles de Ferran, Michael Andretti coming past him. Tracy, 13 wins to his credit over a number of years that he's been involved in the Champ Car Series. And in fact, last time out, Zanardi taking his 14th win, so he's actually gone ahead of Tracy now. Zanardi's only been racing over here for 3 years or so. It's pretty amazing that Zanardi already up to those 14 victories. Paul Tracy first started racing back in 1991. Really first proper season was in 1992, although even then it wasn't a complete championship. But a number of Paul Tracy's victories have come on the ovals. And if he can just keep his patience and just play things carefully at this point in the race, perhaps we could see another chance for Team Green to take their first win. It came so close last week with Dario Franchitti. Let me just tell you that Franchitti at the moment is down in 16th position. He is 2 laps down, not showing the same sort of pace as Paul Tracy. Much less experienced in this form of racing, of course, and Tracy making extensive use of his experience here today. De Ferran, for the moment, his race leader, still the leading quartet, battling all the way through. It's De Ferran, Andretti, Tracy and Fernandez has joined that quartet. In fact, Zanardi has just dropped back very slightly from these top 4 cars.
Further back in the field, Richie Hearn is still running in 11th place, but he was quite a long way behind that whole pack of cars. He is now caught up with the battle for 9th place, which is enjoined between Bobby Rahal and Jimmy Vasser. So Hearn moving back over the picture. He's only 7 seconds behind the race leader, and he's made up quite a bit of ground since that unscheduled pit stop during the caution, or the late pit stop, the extra pit stop, through missing his pit stall.
Alonso Jr. there running in 5th place. Greg Moore is behind him in 6th position. As you see the leaders, you can see they're not far away from the leaders. Zanardi has lost a lot of time in the last couple of laps. He's dropped behind Unser and Moore. He really has begun to take it steady. Meanwhile, we hear that Jimmy Vasser is coming back into the pit. So that's an interesting situation. There you can see on the inset that Jimmy Vasser into the pits once more.
Yeah, that's a slightly early stop, I think, for Jimmy Vasser. He's sort of kind of out of sequence, so there he goes past us. So I can see Grant Weaver looking out of our commentary position here. I can see Grant Weaver making a slight adjustment to the front wing on Jimmy Vasser's car, so he goes get back out onto the racetrack. He is still on the lead lap. He will be still in 11th place, but still on the lead lap, and he comes out well ahead of the race leader, so that's good news, at least for Jimmy Vasser.
Wonderful racing. It's just such fun to see the amount of lead changing that's going on amongst these lead cars. Look at this again. You've got Andretti in the middle. Fernandez comes down to the bottom now, and it looks as though Adrian's going to go back into the lead of this race. Hasn't led many laps, the pole sitter, but he's been patient, just working away. Last pit stop went a bit wrong when he got into a funny angle, but he didn't lose much time thanks to it, and now he's battling with Gilles de Ferran and Michael Andretti. And there he goes through on the inside. Ford power versus Honda power, but there really is so little to choose between them. It's great to see the comparative equality of the engine manufacturers here. So close between them, and there's just nothing. It's all about aerodynamics and picking up the slipstream. There's really nothing to do with sheer horsepower. They're so evenly matched.
Let me correct myself. Jimmy Vasser did actually lose the lead lap. He is 1 lap down now in 13th position. So 10 cars again on the lead lap. Sorry about that. Bobby Rahal, the last of those. 1 rookie driver, then Jimmy Vasser in 13th and Patrick Carpentier 14th. JJ Leto in 15th position, also 1 lap down, and then everybody else behind that, led by Dario Franchitti, are 2 laps off the pace.
Slightly wider line through turns 1 and 2 for Gilles de Ferran. Then for Adrian Fernandez, good view, wonderful view looking back at Fernandez as again more slipstreaming taking place on the backstretch there. Gilles de Ferran actually slipstreaming past Maurizio Gugelmin. Gugelmin's quite a long way down the order. He lies 20th in this race. Some 3 laps down, has been somewhat off the pace all afternoon, and both Pac West cars really struggling. Mark Blundell is only a few places ahead of him in 17th position. Alex Barron down there as well. He's just been passed by Michael, who in turn gets passed by Paul Tracy on the outside. Each of them trying to use the traffic to the advantage, and here comes Andretti now past Maurizio Gugelmin. Max Papis is in there as well. Papis running down in 19th position overall, and he also is some 3 laps down. Fernandez, there he is with Paul Tracy right behind him, and Gilles de Ferran still in the lead group. De Ferran, in fact, if anything's opened up a little advantage, and once again, we saw this earlier in the race, once they begin to get into lapping other cars, that's really the opportunity for somebody to make a break. When they're running on their own, everybody stays together, but once they get into lapping slower cars, somebody just manages to get away, and then it's quite hard to close that gap up again. Next time around, there'll be 150 laps completed, with 100 laps still to go. The battle up front is fierce. Gilles de Ferran has the advantage at the moment. There are less than 200 miles to go now. We're approaching the sort of 2/3 distance, not quite there yet, but Adrian Fernandez is our race leader from Gilles de Ferran in 2nd place, and we are expecting to see some pit stops coming up. We've just heard that Gilles de Ferran is due to come in about a lap's time, but there you are. Paul Tracy, one of the lead group, is in fact the first to come into the pit. Fernandez leading at the moment. The Team Green crew goes to work, the fuel goes aboard, the tyres, a new set of tyres on board, scrubbed already during the practice sessions here this weekend, and ready for Paul Tracy to get going. He gets away very cleanly, spins the wheels nicely, and Paul Tracy is back up very quickly to get up to speed again. Hits the pit lane speed limiter, and then off it again as he accelerates out. A 12-second stop there for Tracy, another good one, and we're expecting to see a few more come in now.
Yeah, but as he comes out of the pits, he does go a lap down there. Adrian Fernandez able to put a lap in. There is Alan Jr. pits out of 6th position.
6th place for Alan Jr. Everything so good so far. There has been some smoke from the back of this car, but it doesn't seem to be any major problem. The CART officials taking a look, everybody checking, but he gets away cleanly. No problems for Alan Jr. So far so good. The car's holding together, but they have to be concerned. Now into the pits. Here comes Gilles de Ferran. Just listen out for the radio communication from Derek Walker. And let's just watch on board as he comes into his pit bay. Right at the end of the pit lane, this one. Very happy with the balance. They're making no changes to the wings on this stop. So I hope that this set of tyres is as good as the last set. There can be some variation. Away he goes. 14.7 for de Ferran, slightly slower than 1 or 2 of the others. Michael's into the pits as well. Again,
watch your brakes, watch your brakes.
Listen out for the radio communication. Locks up a bit coming in.
Reset the fuel meter, reset the fuel meter. Yeah, hold it, just hold it, hold it, hold it. Got trouble, hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it, don't move. Okay, go, 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 go.
So a little bit longer than they'd hoped for, but not bad. 13.1 seconds. He only lost about a second to the best stops that we've seen so far today. In comes Adrian Fernandez now. Let's check out this stop. Needs a good clean stop, no problems and no skewing out of line either on the way in or the way out. A wing change. And they've got a problem on the right rear. Look, the right rear tyre man is in trouble. He's in trouble, and they've got to try and get this car back up again. Nobody realised what the problem was, and finally he gets it going. Now, that was a very interesting situation, but 21.3 seconds means that Fernandez has lost several places. Should stay on the lead lap, though.
No, he'll fall off the lead lap for now, but he should regain it once everybody has made their pit stops. Of course, Greg Moore and Alex Zanardi not yet made their stops. Well, here is Greg Moore, in fact. So Alex Zanardi also is on pit lane. He's right in front of us, or just off to our right-hand side. I'm looking out here. Swap seems to be going very well indeed. Greg Moore, though, he was pushing him away. I think he stalled the engine then.
Well, I think they've still got that clutch problem. They still have the clutch problem. They need to push start him to get him going, or they can fire the engine up. They have to push him, and he has to try and engage gear virtually without a clutch. He does get it going. Poor Greg Moore, though, he's having those terrible difficulties to get out of the pit lane with the clutch problem, and they knew that was coming, and they just had to expect it, really. So Greg Moore, who was leader before at that stop, it all changes around as they get going again, and we wait for things to settle down. It looks as though Alex Zanardi may well have gained ground, as he had an excellent stop from the Ganassi crew. Mark Blundell comes in, by the way. He's a long way down in 16th position. Zanardi crosses the line, but it's Paul Tracy and Zanardi right together, and in fact it was Tracy who came across the line first there by 0.015 a second. As you go back on board with Zanardi, you can see the white and green car of Paul Tracy up ahead of him, and it is Tracy with the advantage. So we're back to where we were virtually a few laps ago, with another leading group. Tracy, Zanardi, Unser's up there as well. Gilles de Ferran fourth, Michael Andretti in fifth, and Adrian Fernandez finds himself back into sixth place now after that rather slow stop, but luckily didn't lose out too much. He's still in that lead group.
161 laps to the bus. There is Paul Tracy, car number 26, Team Cool Green. Last year drove, of course, or last 5 or 6 years, drove for Roger Penske, with the one exception of 1995, and of course he was with Newman House for one season. But he's made his name with Roger Penske, the owner of this racetrack, and he would love to win here. There is Mark Blundell, though, slow on the back straightaway.
Yeah, he's just been into the pits. I wonder what's gone wrong for Mark Blundell. He had throttle problems last time out in Toronto, remember, an electronic throttle problem, and it looks as though he's going to be able to get back into the pits. Hopefully they won't have to bring out the yellow flags, but the CART officials will be keeping a very, very close eye on this as he comes around into the pits to make sure that he's not going to get in anybody's way. And it looks as though it could be the end of the day for the Englishman. He's had an amazing run of success on the super speedways. He's finished all 4 500-mile races that he's done, and his finishing positions have been 6th place, 5th place, 2nd place, and a win last time out in Fontana. Unfortunately, I think Mark's brilliant record in this type of race is just about to go by the board. They're putting fuel in, standard procedure, checking around the back of the car. They're checking that right rear. I wonder if it was actually a problem on the wheel change that has caused him to come back in. Perhaps he's felt some movement at the back, and it's certainly, you can see some movement there, and I don't know whether they've actually tried to undo it, or whether it's a wheel bearing problem. A lot of work going on, but difficult to spot what's actually happening. They're still hard at it, Bushwinkle and the crew on Mark's car. I tell you what, there'll be a local school who'll be watching this on television, being very disappointed, because Mark Blundell made a visit to one of the schools in the area the other day, and was certainly the star of the day. The kids asking him some pretty strange questions, but he really enjoyed himself, and the kids loved having him along. Look, a bit of thumbs up there from Alex Zanardi. Did you see that? He actually gave Paul Tracy a thumbs up sign as he was alongside him. How do you do that at 220 miles an hour?
He's having fun, isn't he? He's relaxed. He's a very relaxed character, as Alex Zanardi. There he goes, flying back past again. Maybe Paul Tracy will give the same thumbs up back to Alex Zanardi as he goes past him. But Alex Zanardi there concentrating hard, of course, as he turns into turn 1. And they're around there. They're probably lapping him through that corner around about 230 miles an hour, 225, 230 miles an hour on the back straight. And here it is, Tracy now looking to have his turn back out in front of the race.
It's good stuff, isn't it? And you can tell the drivers are enjoying themselves as well. First experience of racing quite like this, with this Hanford wing, the wing designed to slow them down a little bit on this type of track, and it certainly has worked in the attempt to improve overtaking. We've seen so much slipstreaming, and we're into the 40s now for the number of lead changes that we've had. Just a remarkable race that we've seen so far. Of course, it's all going to come down to the final 50 miles. That's what's going to count. We've still got 84 laps to go in this race, so that's 168 miles still to go, and it'll all come down to the final, well, 50 miles, I suppose you have to say, and how those pit stops go in the final stages. At the moment, we've got a Reynard Honda Firestone leading, the same combination battling with him, and in fact just about to go past, and then a Reynard Honda with Goodyear tyres lying in third place. Blundell still in the pit lane, and just looks as though it's all over for Mark Blundell. I don't think they're going to be able to do much here. Is there any point in struggling on with it? Well, we'll have to wait and see. I guess there's always a chance of picking up points in a 500-miler. I tend to see a lot of cars go out in the closing stages with mechanical problems. Let's just take a look at the pit stop summary from that last stop. Tracy went in third, came out first with a 12-second stop. Zanardi went in fifth, came out second. Look at Alonso Jr. He gained with the fastest stop of all. De Ferran lost out, and so did Michael Andretti, but only by one place, and they are with that lead group again now.
Yes, and Adrian Fernandez, he fell back to sixth place, but he is in the thick of this battle. He's actually right behind Michael Andretti, as Michael Andretti set sail for Alex Zanardi, and so we're on board again with Gilles de Ferran. Looking back, there's Paul Tracy at the front, and there's four cars, the last of them, the green and red car of Adrian Fernandez. So even with that poor pit stop, he's still there in the lead draft.
Well, Marc Blundell has come back out of the pits again. They're still struggling to get that car right and stay in the race to perhaps pick up some points at the end of it. Tracy and Zanardi. Zanardi still battling away. Tracy's opened up a little bit of an advantage over this last lap or so. Gilles de Ferran playing the game there in second place. As we wait for them to come around past our commentary position, this will be to complete 170 laps. It is 41 lead changes we've enjoyed so far, and they're lapping Helio Castro Neves now. He's still running down in 18th position, some 3 laps behind these leaders.
Who's that lead patch? Look at it. It's Christ up 3 abreast there. Helio Castro Neves in the middle of the young rookie driver there. Ooh, dear, he doesn't want to be in the middle there, so the last place he wants to be. He's had some experience in this racetrack, though. He did the Indy Lights race here 2 years ago. He and Tony Kanaan were teammates then with Tasman Motorsports. He still thinks that was the race of his life. He had a great time. He didn't win the race, but boy, he had fun dicing wheel to wheel. That was at 190 miles an hour. Look, there we go again. This race, of course, is at 220 miles an hour plus, a different thing altogether.
Well, Marc Blundell, as I mentioned, back out on track. They can't seem to determine what the problem with that car is. He says it's all over the place, but they can't seem to find out what the trouble is, and that seems to be an on-running saga. Meanwhile, just how close these drivers get to each other astonishes me. Last time around there, Michael Andretti, Paul Tracy and Gilles de Ferran, there were just literally inches between them at over 220 miles an hour. Just fabulous, and it's great to see the discipline involved here. The concentration required to run at this sort of speed and this close to one another, absolutely fabulous, and they're putting on a tremendous show. So far, it's Alex Zanardi who's taken the initiative for the moment. Paul Tracy is there battling with Michael Andretti for second as Andretti goes through. 172 laps have been completed here at Michigan. We're back at the Michigan Speedway. There's been another accident. It's involved one of our leaders today, the man who took pole position here. It's Adrian Fernandez. The CART safety crew are on hand very quickly, and it's been a heavy impact against the wall. It looked as though it was another situation of getting out wide. Yes, he got in the marbles, and the wheel flying over the fencing as well, and that perhaps has gone into the grandstand. So that's a very worrying moment. Adrian Fernandez hitting the wall extremely hard coming out of turn number 4.
Yeah, that's pretty frightening there. You certainly, as Robbie Gordon said to us earlier on, once you get into the marbles there on the outside of that turn, there's not much you can do. All you can do is brace yourself and wait for the impact and hope it's not too heavy. Well, it was pretty heavy there for Adrian Fernandez, but the CART safety team are down there with Adrian Fernandez now, and they will make sure that he is regained all his faculties before they will endeavour to get him out of that car.
So the car's out behind the safety car, or the pace car at the moment, and we're waiting to see whether they come into the pits. It's likely, I think, that we're going to see virtually all of them come into the pits this time around. The pits haven't been opened yet. They're waiting for that big plus sign to be put up, but it looks as though Adrian Fernandez is okay. We've just heard reports that he has come on the radio to say that he is all right. I think a bit shocked, a bit dazed. He was pretty slow apparently to answer his radio to his crew, but there he is with the safety members. The helmet is off. He's drinking some water. He's taken a big knock, but I think that Adrian is basically all right, so that's good news. Let's take another look at it, Jeremy.
Yeah, and here he's already understeered up wide there into out of the groove there and up into the wall there. He was dicing with Paul Tracy at the time, and there's a wheel goes up in the air, and appears to hit the top of the debris fencing. Not quite sure where it goes from there, but a heavy impact for Adrian Fernandez. You know, there's crash box recorders on these cars, and that wasn't, as accidents go, that wasn't as heavy as some we've seen, but some crashes, the Ford data recorders have recorded more than 100 Gs in the accident, and basically speaking, more than 100 Gs will basically kill you. But because of the safety modifications to these cars over the last few years, there's so much energy absorbing material between the driver and the outside impact there that it's a remarkable advances have been made over the last few years, Ben.
Yes, thankfully they have. The seats, as well, as you say, they've got new seats being used in this series. Now let's take a look at the pit stops. Vital pit stops here. Michael in the top of your picture, Alex Zanardi in the middle of your picture, Paul Tracy at the bottom. Let's see what happens and watch who has the best stop. Slight front wing change on Zanardi's car. Tracy, 10.1, brilliant stop again from Team Green. Zanardi at 9.6, another great stop. He gets out ahead of Tracy, and Andretti, a slow stop here. Why so slow? Difficult to spot exactly what happened. 19.1 seconds. Michael is very late out of the pits.
And dicing wheel to wheel with Richie Hearn as they get past our box here on the exit of the pits. There is Richie Hearn, having moved ahead of Michael Andretti. You know, there's still more than 70 laps to go here, so at this stage in the proceedings, no big deal that Michael Andretti will lose a few positions.
So Michael has to do the work again as the leaders come back out. Adrian Fernandez out of his car. That's a very good sign. Back at the Michigan Speedway for the US 500, 180 laps completed, 70 laps still to go. We're under caution period as a result of Adrian Fernandez crash, the leader of this race for quite a few laps. He's been in that lead group for a lot of the race, started on pole position. Adrian has limped away from his car. It looks as though he's really taken a heavy bash to his knees. Of course, in the monocoque tub, Jeremy, there's not a lot of space for the legs, but they can still take a very hefty whack against some pretty hard edges, can't
Yeah,
they?
absolutely right, Ben. If you can imagine just sitting there in the car, your knees are away from the bulkhead, and as the car slams sideways into the wall, your legs just follow an instant later, and then they tend to knock against each other, and that's what it tends to be pretty painful. But it's great to see there Adrian there with John Potter, who is actually the chairman of the Championship Drivers Association, making sure that Adrian's okay. He looks after all the insurance aspects and looks after the drivers, make sure everything's okay with them, and he's been a great friend to the drivers here in this series, and just helping Adrian walk himself into the medical centre, be checked over by Dr. Adrian Cohen. Here's another replay of this accident. There's the two leaders coming up on Michel Jourdain Jr.'s car, and his countryman Adrian Fernandez heavily into the wall there.
Yes, really
behind him.
Leaving a big mark against the wall, and you can see it just scraped along. I mean, imagine the speed that it was doing as it hit the wall. He hadn't had much chance to slow it down, had he?
No, you can't really slow down the car at all. You can just sort of kind of brace yourself, and what you tend to do is move your knees probably across to the left-hand side of the car, and as there's the force of the impact, your body's not strong enough to stop your knees from whacking across into the right side of the monocoque there, and a painful rap on the knees for Adrian Fernandez.
So great disappointment for the Mexican, who seemed to be having a great weekend here in Michigan, but he's not going to score any more points. He lies fourth in the championship, won't add to it today. Zanardi is race leader. The overhead view of the Michigan Speedway, the 2-mile oval that we are into the last 68 laps of the race here. Still a fairly long way to go, but things beginning to settle down now, and the drivers looking towards the climax of this race to try and pick up the slipstreams just as perfectly as possible. Just one lap now to go until we get back into green flag racing.
Yeah, and with 68 laps to go, depending on whether or not there are any more cautions, they should be able to do it now just on one more pit stop, and that shouldn't be too much of a problem. They seem to be able to do 35, 36 laps, so with 67 laps to go and 66 next time around, that should be no problem for just one more pit stop.
So that really is going to begin to heat things up now as they head towards that next pit stop. One more look at what happened to Adrian Fernandez. There he was with Paul Tracy right behind him as they went down the backstretch. Paul Tracy got the toe, went down the inside, as we've seen so many times already in this race. Fernandez followed him through turns 3 and 4, started going up, up, up into the marbles. There was nothing he could do about it. It was purely in the slipstream of Paul Tracy. He lost downforce, and then it was all over. And, well, that's the trouble. And we may see more of that as this race continues. People getting a little more eager not to lose too much time, and it's possible we may see 1 or 2 more effects there. So we don't know anything about any possible injuries in the stands. The wheel did go over the fence as we saw, and there are reports of injuries, but we know no more at this stage. We will let you know as we get some news. As we get ready to go green flag racing once again, Alex Zanardi, and it's yellow. We've got a car off on the infield. Now, who is that? Is it Dario Franchitti? It looks as though it is. Yes, Franchitti off on the infield. He was running in 14th position, and it goes a yellow flag immediately. Now, what happened there? Of course, we don't know. Maybe a couple of cars got a little bit too much side by side as they got on the power again. Tyres very cold, of course, and Dario just shot across. Look, he was in the middle of the pack, and suddenly he just shot across from the middle onto the grass over there. I wonder if that was as a result of flooring the throttle, or whether something broke on the car. Seems a little bit strange. Just by the way, look at the amount of mess there is on his roll hoop, and the amount of sort of rubbish that car collects as he goes around the race course. Of course, that's all been on his visor at one point or another. They need a few tear-offs on a race like this.
They use more tear-offs here, obviously, than they would in a regular race. And back to yellow now, but it shouldn't be for too long. I think they'll just have to tow Franchitti's car back out of the way. You can see just the flashing light there of the CART safety crew again down to the inside of turn 3, which is where Dario ended up in the grass with a stalled engine.
There's Alex Zanardi, started in 7th place, currently the leader of this race. Has only led some 15 of the 184 laps. His fastest lap, 226 mile an hour average. And Alex and Paul Tracy have been enjoying quite a good little run over the last section of this race so far. Remember, Alex, the defending race winner here, and drove and dominated, in fact, the final stages of last year's race. He took the lead relatively early on. They're just complaining over the radio that the pace car is going a little too slowly. Perhaps that's part of the trouble. The tyre temperatures have dropped away too much, and that's part of the reason that Dario Franchitti maybe went off to the inside just now. Just looking back at last year, by the way, Zanardi led from lap 153 virtually to the end. Looking at some of the milestones today as well, Zanardi perhaps on course for his 5th consecutive win. Vasa has already made his 100th career start, lies in 6th place at the moment. Ganassi looking for their 7th win. Rahal making his 40th 500-mile start today. That's a pretty impressive achievement. 300th win, a possibility for Ford today. Their leading runner now, though, is Richie Hearn. And Penske looking for their 100th win. Well, that's still possible. Alonso Jr. lies in 3rd place. And, of course, one of the most canny drivers when it comes to racing on an oval. And Alonso Jr., one of the few who seem to be practicing this morning, Jeremy, in the warm-up in terms of using the slipstream. Yeah, getting into the draft of several cars. He purposely made out to try and do that, actually in his backup car, because he didn't want to put too many miles on the race car. 500 miles, that's pretty marginal for some of these guys, for some of the engines at least. You don't want to overwork them. It's hard enough work around this racetrack, flat out pretty much all the way. So he went out in the backup car just to make sure there were no problems with that car in case he needed it, but primarily to save the mileage on this car. In actual fact, once the warm-up was over, the Penske crew was set into the backup car after it had done its work this morning, and actually readying it for a road course test tomorrow at Elkhart Lake, if you can believe that. No peace for these guys, either the drivers or the crews. So, as Alonso Jr. continues round in that 3rd position, let's take a look at some of the highlights of this race so far. With 186 laps completed, let's look over some of the other action that's happened today already. This was the start of the race. It was a good clean start, I'm glad to say. No yellow flags early on in the race, and a good battle up front. Scott Pruitt had problems when his onboard jacks failed to work. They had to go to a mechanical system, and that's affected him in this race quite a lot already. Robbie Gordon was the man who caused the first caution period when he whacked the outside wall comprehensively. Dennis Vitolo managed to just brush the wall, but that proved to be the end of his race, even though very little damage was actually done to the car. We lost several cars with mechanical problems. Andre Ribeiro was early. Adrian Fernandez had a poor stop at one occasion, but still managed to get back up amongst the lead group. That has involved people like Michael Andretti, Gilles de Ferran, and this man, Greg Moore, throughout most of the day. But Moore himself has been suffering with clutch problems, and that's hampered his effort. Adrian Fernandez made a few changes to the car in the race, but had a poor pit stop that cost him about 21 seconds when a right rear refused to come off. And Greg Moore, with those clutch problems, stalled it in the pits and lost more time on his next stop. Then we saw the crash to Adrian Fernandez, which has put him out of the race, and that has caused one of the more recent yellow flag periods. And now we're just under caution because of Dario Franchitti spinning to the inside as we went onto the green flag just now. Adrian Fernandez in the medical centre at the moment. It is bruised knees that is his main problem. Well, that's a pretty minor problem, you have to say, after an impact that heavy.
Yeah, remarkable that he should be able to walk away, albeit somewhat not exactly totally steadily perhaps, but able to walk away from that crash. Great news for Adrian Fernandez. Just a couple of notes as we get ready for the restart. The order quickly: Zanardi, Tracy, Unser, De Ferran, Moore, Vassar, Hearn, Andretti, Rahal, Herta, Carponche, and Scott Pruitt, who's able to make up a lap. He didn't stop under the previous yellow, was able to make up that lap effectively under that brief green flag period, and then come in and make a pit stop. So he is back on the lead lap in 12th position.
Here we go then. Green flag awaits the leaders as they come round. They're already building up to speed. It's Alex Zanardi as it goes green from Paul Tracy in second, and Al Unser Jr. up there on the outside. And now perhaps the racing starts to get a little more intense as we get into the final 62 laps of this race. Paul Tracy takes over the lead from Alex Zanardi, Al Unser Jr. with Gilles de Ferran right there in 4th place. And it looks as though it's going to be these four who are going to battle for the lead for the moment.
3 abreast into turn 3. Great of is Alex Zanardi getting back out into the lead. Positions changing all the time, but there is Tracy now set up on the outside of Alex Zanardi, but Zanardi will move up towards the wall. So what? Paul Tracy still comes along the outside, and they're wheel to wheel going towards turn 1. Tracy on the outside, and wheel to wheel, 2 cars behind him as well, awfully close into turn 1. And Zanardi, he sees the better line. The outside line is a quicker groove, and Paul Tracy has that groove. Here, however, is Michael Andretti.
Yeah, he's doing a drive-through through the pits on the 60-mile-an-hour limit. That was for running over his air hose on the last stop. And remember, that has to be done under green flag conditions, so it's taken a while before they've been able to do that penalty. But he is back out. He will get back up to speed, but that is going to affect Michael. It puts him at the back of the lead lap. And let's just hope that he can get up to speed quickly enough. Look at this three-way battle for the lead. Paul Tracy goes ahead once again. Zanardi in 2nd position, then Al Unser Jr. and Gilles de Ferran. Next up, Greg Moore in 5th place. Jimmy Vassar is not far behind. He's in 6th position. 7th is Richie Hearn. Richie's been up with the leaders all day long. Meanwhile, Michael Andretti finds himself on his own, trying to catch up.
Yeah, he is 24 seconds behind the leaders, but he is on the lead lap. That's the good news. The bad news is he's on his own, and these other cars are dicing together. They will have the draft, the benefit of the draft. They'll probably be able to run a little bit quicker. There they are, Paul Tracy and Al Unser Jr., teammates, of course, last year, and then what, a couple of races ago in Cleveland, they had that coming together in the pit lane, and that will certainly prey on Al Unser Jr.'s mind, I think, and he lets Paul Tracy have the run ahead this time. But that Penske running awfully well right now, and the Mercedes-Benz engines in that car, and also the car right behind him of Greg Moore.
Yes, a good point there, Jeremy. They certainly are running very strongly indeed. After it appeared from qualifying that Mercedes were struggling a little bit apart from Al Unser Jr. They're right there in the race, that's for sure, and using the tow as well, of course, but so is everybody else. Fantastic racing between this lead group. Look at Jimmy Vassar now making a move. As we go on board with Gilles de Ferran, he's behind Jimmy Vassar. Greg Moore up ahead there as well in the blue and white car. This is just stunning racing as Paul Tracy and Alex Zanardi continue up front.
Yeah, you reckon this is good? You stick around for about another 30 or 40 laps, then it's really going to get interesting. At the moment, they're just jockeying position, just trying to find out really how the cars do draft. And there is Richie Hearn. He's run awfully well today. He fell back a little bit after that miscue in the pits, but he's back up with this lead pack, and there they are. And Al Unser Jr. and Alex Zanardi side by side into turn 3. Unser on the outside line, Zanardi down low.
Zanardi and Al Unser Jr. there now then battling side by by side as Al Unser Jr. goes to the front, and that gets a big cheer from the crowd. They love to see little Al leading the race, but now it's Zanardi back in front. The crowd are lapping this up, and Al Unser Jr. lost out a lot there. He had to back out of it, and look how many places he lost as a result. He really has to get down to the inside, lost momentum big time, and now he's going to have to rejoin this lead group right at the back behind Richie Jourdain. In fact, it's worse than that. Al Unser Jr. slowing right down. He's heading for the pits. Al Unser Jr. is in trouble. I don't believe it. Just a moment after he led this race, and he elicited this huge cheer from the crowd, and it looks as though it's problems for Al Unser Jr. as he heads his way slowly down the pit lane. Roger Penske, who owns this track, who has hoped for that 100th win for this team for over a year, and it doesn't look as though it's going to happen on this occasion. He's shut the engine off. It looks as though it's all over. Disappointment once again for Al Unser Jr. and for Penske Racing in the closing 56 laps of the race.
Great shame, and as you say, there was a huge cheer went up from this crowd as he took the lead, and just seconds later, poor Al Unser Jr. slowing down there, and he shuts the engine off, and that's the end of his day. But a great run once again, and nothing to show for it for Team Penske.
Tracy and Zanardi still up there. De Ferran's there. Vassar up there too. Then Greg Moore, Richie Hearn, and don't count out Brian Herter or Bobby Rahal, because they're on the lead lap. They're running 7th and 8th at the moment. Patrick Carpentier also on the lead lap. So is Scott Pruitt. So is Michael Andretti. But Michael, can he go fast enough? He's doing 32.3 on his own, which is pretty impressive. Almost the same pace as the leaders, but it's not enough to close up. And he's going to... he really would love a yellow flag, I have to say. Michael Andretti, that would be perfect for him now. He needs a caution period so they all bunch up again, and then he would really be in with a shout towards the end of this race. Remember, we're still going to see another pit stop, but that's not going to happen for another 20 laps or so if it goes according to plan. Of course, a yellow flag might affect that if there is a caution. Gilles de Ferran then, at the moment in third. It's for a moment Zanardi who leads, but not for long, because Tracy's about to go past again. The 200 lap mark here at the Michigan Speedway. The US 500 continues as a battle up front between the likes of Alex Zanardi, Gilles de Ferran, Paul Tracy, Jimmy Vassar, Richie Hearn, Greg Moore, Brian Herter, Bobby Rahal, Scott Pruitt. They're all on the lead lap. There's virtually nothing to choose between them, and they've still got 48 laps to go. This is great stuff, but we're still building gradually towards the climax of this race. As we say, still another pit stop to make. We've seen little Al go out of the race. We've got a chance to catch up with him after the disappointment.
Fine from his car. I understand its electrical problems was what put you out, but you've got to be excited about leading the race there for a short period of time.
Yeah, it just seems every time we get in front, something happens right now, but I don't know if it was electrical or what it was. You know, the engine just started cutting out on me right when I came off of fourth, when I got the lead, and I told Roger under the yellow we were gonna lead this thing right as soon as it went green. And you know, what can I say? I mean, the car was beautiful, and the crew did a fantastic job. And I want to say hi to little Al and Cody and Shannon and little Joe at home.
Okay, little Al's back. Thanks.
So little Al out of the race, so sad after. It really looks as though he was going to run for the finish here, but you've got to get to the finish. That's what the key to this 500-mile race, to any race, is. You've got to be there when the checkered flag comes out. It's no good how good you run before that. Totally irrelevant. On board now with Bobby Rahal, and he and Brian Herter are running pretty much together. They've been towing each other around, and they're only 4 seconds behind Alex Zanardi.
Yes, they're dropping back just a little bit though. Greg Moore is the next car ahead of them, and these two, they've lost the draft of the leaders now, the two Team Rahal cars, and they are beginning to fall back just a little bit more, 4.7 seconds. That gap, the gap from Herter ahead to the race leader Alex Zanardi, and 2.6 seconds between Herter and Moore.
Now look at this, Bobby's having to fiddle with part of his dash display underneath the screen. How about that at 230 miles an hour? It was coming off, and he was trying to put it back on with one hand, steering with the other hand, and that's not as easy as it sounds. Look, he's doing it again, trying to tape it back down as he goes across start-finish line. Fabulous pictures of Bobby Rahal at work, and I think at work not quite as he meant it to be. I think there'll be some demands to get that a bit better attached next time. But Bobby Rahal not letting him distract him too much. You can't when you're doing this sort of speed, just inches away from a concrete wall. Indeed, Bobby tasted cement dust last year when he hit the wall, passing Dennis Vitolo. Vitolo made a bit of a squeeze on Bobby Rahal, and he hit the wall pretty hard. Now, we've managed to find out a bit more about the injury to one of the men in the stand.
What's the situation on the spectators in turn 4?
We've had 3 people who have been critically injured. They're going to be transported by helicopter to nearby hospitals. We do have an emergency situation.
All right, any more information you can give us than that? Were there other minor injuries?
There were 7 injuries total, and we do have a number of ambulances that are up behind the turn 4 grandstands, and we'll be transporting those people immediately. We do have a very fine care staff here, a medical staff who is on the scene right now.
Thank you.
Well, obviously very sad news to hear that some spectators have been seriously injured as a result of the accident that occurred to Adrian Fernandez earlier on, the wheel going over the catch fencing, and our thoughts are very much with them. Let's just hope that they are okay, but obviously it is a very serious situation. Let's go back to the racing. Zanardi still out front at the moment. 209 laps have been completed, 41 laps to go. We are expecting to see pit stops within the next 6 or 7 laps, I would imagine, if it carries on like this. You're watching a battle there between Richie Hearn and Greg Moore, and that is the battle for what is 5th place right now. There's Paul Tracy, by the way. He's dropped back off the lead for the moment. He's down to 4th, and he's perhaps just backed off a little bit, conserving some fuel.
Yeah, so we hear from the pits he is conserving fuel. Alex Zanardi is absolutely flying. He's leaving the field for dead. It's 2.4 seconds he's pulled away from the field in the last 3 or 4 laps, and he's really turned the wick up. 31.58 last time around. That's a pretty quick lap indeed, and he's really upped the pace. It's very rare. I hadn't seen many below 32 seconds flat up until this last segment, and now we're getting down to the nitty-gritty stuff, and Alex Zanardi is turning up the wick.
Yeah, that's right, as we would imagine, as we've seen him do in the past, and difficult on this kind of track to do that, but he certainly has pulled out away a big advantage. Look at the speeds there as they come across. In fact, Moore the fastest on that lap because he had a slipstream to help him, 226 mile an hour average, but he's at the back of that group, so he's got a lot of work to do to try and close up. Meanwhile, Zanardi on his own still managed a 224 mile an hour lap, and that's probably even more impressive. There, Hearn and Greg Moore do battle at the back of the lead group for 5th position. But Zanardi's lead last time was some 2.7 seconds. He needs to build up the advantage as they head towards the pit stops, and then he needs the team to execute one of its famous rapid stops. So we'll just have to wait and see exactly what happens. He's lying in 2nd position. Paul Tracy still involved with a bit of battling. It's Max Papis they're going past. Max quite a long way down the order. We've still got a number of cars running though. 21 cars are, I think, still running in this race. Michel Jourdain is the last one, but he's still out there. There might be some 12 laps down. Look at that, 3 abreast. Jimmy Vasser. Ooh. Greg Moore, I was a bit worried that he was getting a bit too wide there, getting onto the marbles, but he managed to keep it all together, and Greg Moore continues around just ahead now of Jimmy Vasser. That puts Greg Moore into 4th position, and Moore really beginning to go very quickly in the last few laps, perhaps aware that Zanardi's getting away up front, and now he decides it's time to do something about it.
3.7 seconds though, that's a lot of ground to make up when you haven't really got a drafting partner, and that is the case right now for Michel Jourdain. He's about 3/4 of a second or so ahead of Paul Tracy, and that's not really close enough to be able to make the ground, I think, towards the lead that he really does need to do.
There's the Ferret, and then Paul Tracy, as you say, 3.9 seconds, as you mentioned, for Zanardi. There we are, riding on board with Alex Zanardi, coming through that turn 4 area, about to cross start-finish line, and that's 215 laps in the books now. 35 laps to go, and Zanardi really has opened up an advantage. 4.3 seconds now is the gap. Back to 2nd place, Gilles Ferrin and Paul Tracy still battling for that 2nd position. But Zanardi working on the car throughout this race with veteran race engineer Mo Nunn. They have to get... Oh, we've got a...
Dario Franchitti just blew up as he came past here. That will for sure, I think, bring out the yellow flag. Yep, there is the yellow flag, comes out from the start of Jim Swintel. A big blow up for Dario Franchitti. He was, even despite that mistake, he was actually worked his way back up into 13th place, a couple of laps off the pace, but that's as far as he's going to go this afternoon.
So the pit lane is closed for the moment as they get everybody bunched up behind the pace car. So of course the advantage that Alex has built up over the last few laps of 5.4 seconds is back down to 0. And the battle in the pit lane will be absolutely crucial to the last part of this race.
And this is exactly what Michel Andretti needed. He was well off the back of the pack. He will now be able to rejoin with this main group, make the pit stop along with them, and it's now all down to the pit stops and then some intense activity over the last, what we'll have about 30-odd laps to go. This yellow is just a little bit earlier than most of these guys would have really preferred. They're going to have to run 32 laps or so, 31, 32 laps under green, depending on how long this caution period is. And that could be crucial.
It could be, but I think they should be all right on that. They should be, once they get into the pits and get refueled, I think they'll be just about able to run flat out to the flag. It will be interesting. Perhaps one or two will be a bit tight. There is Michel Andretti. And as Jeremy said, he's got a really good shot at winning this race still, although there'll be quite a few cars for him to get past. But the important thing is he will be in the tow. He will be with the lead group. And we've seen how fast Michel has been here today in traffic. So he really does have a tremendous opportunity. Zanardi, De Ferran, Tracy are top three at the moment, all closing up, bunching up gradually behind the pace car as the safety cars are sent out to inspect the track and to clear away the car of Dario Franchitti. They're also checking the track for any oil that may have been laying as a result of that Honda engine blowing up in the back of Dario's car. And that will be a very close track inspection.
Dario did a pretty good job. He got it low on the racetrack as quick as he could here, coming past start-finish line, which is, a few of you may remember, a couple of years ago, Alex Zanardi had a blow-up in exactly the same place. This one wasn't quite so dramatic. When Zanardi's engine blew up, there was just this massive cloud of smoke. It completely obliterated the view for the drivers, almost caused several accidents on its own. But that one not quite so much dramatic, but the same effect. Out of the race goes Dario Franchitti.
So bad day for Dario Franchitti. He'd stayed in there, as you say, but he now joins our list of retirements. And there goes the plus sign. It means the pits are open for all the drivers on the lead lap. That's why we have a differentiation between the plus and the minus. Once the lead drivers have been in for their pit stop, then everybody else is allowed in. But it just means there's not too much bunching going on in the pits, not too much chaos. And that means, what have we got, Jeremy? 11 cars on the lead lap, so not too busy down there.
Yeah, absolutely. 11 cars on the lead lap. And we've seen before that Hearn and Andretti, their pits are pretty close together. The order as they come in then, let's just set the scene here. Zanardi, De Ferran, Tracy, Moore, Vassar, Hearn, Herta, Rahal, Pruitt, Carponche and Michel Andretti in 11th place. Those are the cars in the lead lap. They will be coming in right now. Next time around, all the cars more than one lap down can make their pit stops. They are led by Tony Kanaan, the rookie driver, in 12th place. He is on a lap on his own. He's one lap down. In 13th is JJ Leto, 2 laps down, along with Gugelmin and Castro Neves. And Art Meyer in the Lola is 3 laps down in 16th.
Here we go then, the pit stops, the all-important pit stops. And we've got to keep a close eye on this because it will determine order as they come out. Of course, the slipstreaming will mean that it's not a disaster if you're a second or two slower on the stop, but it's still going to be interesting to see who gets out first and who manages to get through cleanly. De Ferran stops just ahead of Zanardi. They have to be a bit careful there. Zanardi's going to have to watch out because De Ferran's car sticking out a little bit as they make some changes to one or two of the cars. Tracy has a change. Zanardi is out of the pits and he gets clear of De Ferran's car, and De Ferran loses a bit of time. In fact, it was a slower stop from Walker Racing than it was from just about everybody else. That's unusual. They'll be disappointed with that. Walker usually amongst the fastest crews.
Yeah, that's right. That's slightly surprising there, but again, fabulous work by Team Cool Green. And Michel Andretti, a leisurely stop there. He goes, very leisurely stop there, and he remains at the back of the pack.
Well, I guess he didn't need to make a fast stop. He's at the back of that group anyway, although he could have made up a bit of time. We'll have to see what happens in the remaining laps here at Michigan. More drama here at Michigan. Paul Tracy's had to come back into the pits. They had a problem with the right rear wheel. It wasn't properly attached. He had to come back in. They've been attacking it with a hammer, with just about everything to get it back out. And finally, they managed to sort it out. It was to do with the attachment of that wheel onto the hub. They got it sorted out and finally did it up properly and sent him out. Now, he is still going to be on the lead lap. He's charging around at the moment to try and catch up to the pack.
Yeah, the crew got him out just in time. He was able to beat the pace car to the blend line by about probably less than 100 yards or so. That was pretty tight. But there he is now on the racetrack, going through turn 2 onto the back straight, and he is on the lead lap, so he will be able to join the back of the pack. And valuable loss of ground, of course. He came out of the pits in second place, having come in third place, and now to the back of the field. But he is behind as they're going green.
Here we go, green flag racing for the last 28 laps then. And Alex Zanardi has the advantage over teammate Jimmy Vasser. Would you believe it's the Ganassi team once again in control of this race? They've won the last 2 races here. Jimmy Vasser in 1996, Alex Zanardi in 1997. And now they run 1 and 2 around this racetrack. Unbelievable. Greg Moore lies in third place. Scott Pruitt is in 4th position. Then Brian Herter and Gilles de Ferran, of course, who lost out. Here comes Vasser towing past Alex Zanardi. And Zanardi will know that Vasser's car every bit as good as his. This is going to be a fascinating battle between the 2 teammates. Such good friends, but each of them determined to take the 7th win in a row for the team.
Yeah, you can throw the friendship out of the window right now, I think, as Zanardi there pulls down the inside. I think it was Jimmy Vasser on the outside, but maybe it wasn't. I think it's Zanardi again back ahead, but here's Adrian Fernandez in the pits.
Your crash into the wall. What set the wheels in motion, so to speak, for the crash? What happened?
Well, Tracy was coming behind me and, got into the inside and straight away pulled to the outside where I was on my line and cut completely my air, and I was just a passenger. Just the car just went completely to the high, to the great part of the track, and after that I have no control of the car. I was completely a passenger.
So you're saying that Tracy hit you or just simply took the air away?
Took the air away. So he went into the inside of me, and instead of keeping his line, he went straight out in my entry. He went out in the high part of the track and completely cut my air, and I lost my car completely. Once you get there, there's no grip, there is nothing I can do.
And fellas, you want to know how hard he hit? The onboard telemetry says 92 plus Gs.
Wow, that's really hard, and it's good to see that Adrian Fernandez is okay and out of the medical unit now. But back to what's happening in this race. Look at Scott Pruitt, the man who made up so much ground earlier on in an earlier pit stop. Did a great job tactically here, and now running in a fine 3rd place with Greg Moore bearing down on him. And look at the view from on board Scott Pruitt's car as Greg Moore cuts to the inside. And we've got a yellow. Let's got another full course yellow, everybody. Let's see what's happened. I'm not sure if we've got an incident somewhere. Oh, it's a heavy impact, and I think it looks very nasty indeed for JJ Leto. I thought it was Leto's car, the Hogan racing machine, and JJ Leto out of this with a very heavy impact.
Yeah, he'd been dicing mightily with Helio Castroneves. They'd switched positions a couple of times since that green flag came out. They were battling over 14th place, just behind Mauricio Gugelmin as well. They were 2 laps down, but that action there was no less intense, and JJ, we can see moving around in the cockpit, he's flicked his visor up, but heavy damage to the right side of that car.
Yeah, it was good to see he's waving at, whoever, showing that he's basically okay. But let's hope his legs are okay. Let's see what sort of whack he took here. Replay coming up to you of JJ Leto. Almost a repeat of the accident that occurred to Adrian Fernandez, and just launched itself into the wall once again, didn't it? Ran alongside the outside. Same place on exit of turn number 4. So several cars, in fact, reported to have run over debris as a result of that, including some of our lead group, de Ferran, Brian Herter and Bobby Rahal.
Yeah, that's not surprising. When you hit the wall at that sort of speed, there tends to be shrapnel goes all over the place, little bits of carbon fibre, and they can cause absolute carnage amongst these tyres. These race tyres are either the Firestones or the Goodyears. They're not, they're pretty sturdy, but these little bits of carbon fibre shards that get in there, bad news indeed. So I'm sure we're going to see some of them making even precautionary pit stops. All these cars have on board little sensors within the tyres, tyre pressure sensors. They were developed by Epic Technologies, a group in Pennsylvania, along with Marlboro Team Penske, which came about as a result of an accident by Emerson Fittipaldi at at Phoenix International Raceway 6 or 7 years ago. Fittipaldi was leading that race under caution. It went green. He didn't know he had a puncture in the right rear. He crashed. If they'd known, then he could have come in and made that pit stop, but he wasn't able to do it. That's when they began to develop this system, and that has now been passed around to all the teams who use that. So in the pits, the telemetry systems on these cars monitor those tyre pressures, and the crew in the pits will know if one of these tyres has lost pressure.
Well, there is Scott Pruitt. There's some complaints from Greg Moore that apparently he reckons that Pruitt passed him under yellow. Well, that's one for the CART officials to find out. Let's go down to Gary Gerald in the pits with Dario Franchitti now.
Dario Franchitti headed back to pit road after blowing the engine. What I'm curious is about your thoughts about the Hanford device and the type of racing that we've been witnessing today. Do you like it?
Oh yeah, for sure. I like the type of racing. Basically what's happening is if you're not in a line of cars, if you pull out to try and pass somebody on your own, your history, you've got to really think about what you're doing out there. The cars are pretty stable. I guess a lot depends on setup. My car was bad at the start and very good towards the end. A lot depends on setup, but I think it's a good thing, and I think the racing was very close out there.
Of the guys that you saw around you, do you think anybody's got any kind of an advantage as we come down toward the final laps?
I mean, I was running pretty close to the back, so I couldn't really say.
All right, just good to see you're all right. Thank you. Dario Franchitti headed back to his crew.
So disappointing to see him out, but we are going to see an amazing climax to this race. Zanardi, Vassar, Pruitt, Moore, De Ferrer and Herter, Rahal, Hearn, Andretti, Tracy even. The winner could come from any of them, so you've got to stay with us. Into the closing stages very much now of the US 500 from Michigan Speedway, and we're under caution period after an accident for JJ Letter. We've just seen JJ being taken from the car, but it does look as though he could have badly injured one of his legs, Jeremy. He was helped onto one of the stretchers and then put in the back of the ambulance there.
Yeah, grimacing somewhat as he was put onto the stretcher, but carried out of the car. They didn't actually have a brace on his leg, so let's hope that there's nothing too serious though for JJ. Certainly he was in some pain there, but you're going to be in some pain after an accident like that. He's going to be sore for a while.
That's right.
And particularly, again, the knees are very similar accidents to the other ones we've seen this afternoon.
Our leader, Alex Zanardi, the average speed of this race, 217 miles an hour. Just look at the number of lead changes, up to 54 now. We've had 48 laps of caution and 9 cars out of the race.
Yeah, that's 54 changes of lead at the start-finish line, Ben. Goodness knows how many there have been around the rest of the racetrack, at least double that.
Yes, good point, good point.
Some just tremendous racing here this afternoon. This Hanford wing, designed by the Swift Engineering's technical director, Dr. Mark Hanford, and out in the pits with Chip Ganassi.
The man who calls the shots. He's on the radio with Alex. Of course, he owns the team, both men first and second. What kind of orders? How do you approach these final laps?
Gary, as you know by now, we have 2 number 1 drivers. We got 2 number 1 cars. There's only one rule: don't crash into each other.
Who concerns your 2 drivers or you the most that's behind the challenge?
Well, you got to look at the guys right behind us. I mean, you got to look at Pruitt. You got to look at Moore. Those guys are fast. They've turned some very fast laps. This thing's far from over.
What is your impression now of racing with the Hanford device?
I'll tell you what. From my vantage point, I've never seen a race like this in my life at this joint. It's pretty damn exciting.
I think you got a lot of company there. Let's go to Jack.
Well, Gary, Tom Anderson went over and talked to his boss, Chip Ganassi, monitoring the radios, watching the TV, and then you radioed over to your driver, Jimmy Vassar. Hey, everything's pretty quiet around here, and you said maybe it's everyone for themselves?
Yeah, that's the deal, Jack. All bets are off. Everybody for themselves now.
Now, what can you do? Do you have any working knowledge or maybe some inside ideas that you could pass on to Jimmy to try and overhaul his teammate?
No, that's just the way the cars are set. The last chance we had to do anything about it was at the pit stop, and we decided to go for the position rather than doing some changes to the car. He had been pushing a little bit later on in the session, but now with this yellow, the tires won't get that far into the deal, so we're hoping to have a pretty good race car right now.
Jan, when Tom Anderson radioed that information to his driver, Jimmy Vassar, all Vassar said is, okay, it's about time.
Well, we'll have to see what happens, but one of the more laid-back drivers out there, isn't he, Jimmy?
Yeah, he is. He's a good old California boy. There's another Californian, Scott Pruitt, but as you say, not much phases Jimmy Vasser. He has a very, very even temperament. Alex Zanardi, he's a Latin. There's certainly a lot of fire and determination in him, and there's plenty of fire and determination in Jimmy Vasser, but he just shows it in a different way. And right now he's totally focused on the job at hand, as are all these other guys. We're going to have 15, 16 laps to go when we go green, and that is absolutely maximum full rich for these engines, as much power as they can produce, and just hang on there in the cockpit.
It's going to be great, isn't it? What an amazing climax we're going to see. I'm amazed to see how many cars we've still got running in this race as well, for that matter. We've still got 17, 18 cars still running. Brilliant. If you consider that many times in the past we haven't had more than about 10 or 11. I think, in fact, on average, it's only been about 11 finishers in most of the 500 milers.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've had a full field in terms of scoring number of points. So it's good to see. I wonder whether we'll see all these guys run into the end of this race. So there's some action to come here this afternoon, and it's going to be pretty intense out there. There's, as Tom Anderson said there, Managing Director of Target Chip Ganassi Racing, and he calls the shots for Jimmy Vasser. All bets are off. But around the country and in the pit lane, there's all sorts of people also putting bets on their favourites right here this afternoon. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, but so unpredictable. I certainly wouldn't want to call it as yet. I'm happy to call it as it happens, though, because we're going to be seeing a tremendous climax, a tremendous end to this race, as we are getting ready for them to go green. And away goes Zanardi. Look at him laying down streaks of rubber on the backstretch, a little bit like Moore did earlier. He goes for it on the restart to try and open up an advantage to Jimmy Vasser. Vasser, in turn, opens up an advantage over Scott Pruitt.
Great restart there by Alex Zanardi, and he did that last time around, and Jimmy Vasser was able to get up in, even catch the draft from 50, 60, 70 yards behind and catch up with Alex Zanardi. But this time around, Zanardi's made a bit better of a jump, and he's a whole second ahead as they come past start-finish line.
So 16 laps to go, and everybody now going for it flat out as the battle behind Vasser and Zanardi continues. You can see Vasser there second, Pruitt in third, then it's Gilles de Ferran. De Ferran comes down to the inside of Scott Pruitt. Now it really begins to matter, just inches away as they go through the corner at 220 miles an hour and accelerate even faster speeds as they come across start-finish line. Zanardi's advantage, 1.3 seconds at the end of that lap. He's got to hold on for 15 more, though, and the tow will gradually begin to take its effect. De Ferran stays ahead of Scott Pruitt, and it's De Ferran now who goes chasing after Jimmy Vasser.
Yeah, boy, that was awfully close in turn 4 there between Scott Pruitt and Gilles de Ferran. I think it was possible to forget now, it's so close. But there they are, those 4 cars. They'll get closer than that by the time they come around one more time, I fancy. But there is Jimmy Vasser in second place, and he is closing the gap just a little bit, I think, to the race leader, Alex Zanardi.
Yes, a few tenths of a second there. What to keep an eye on Michael Andretti. He's at the back of the group. He made up 1 or 2 places, but now he's dropped 1 again. He's back down to 9th.
That's right, Richie Hearn there moving back ahead of Michael Andretti, 8th and 9th, those two. They've switched places each of the last 2 laps. They don't want to do too much side-by-side racing at this stage. They want to get in line and get themselves up into that lead draft and try and tow themselves closer to the race leader, Alex Zanardi.
Zanardi's being caught by Jimmy Vasser. He cannot do it on his own. He tried to make the break and then get away, but they're all running flat out. There's nothing he can do about the effect of the tow, and Vasser closing up to the back of Alex Zanardi. It's going to be, at the moment, it looks like it's going to be a 5-way battle for the lead, and look at the 2 Ganassi cars absolutely together again. Vasser was able to make up that 1.3 second deficit in just 2 laps. That's how much of the tow he got from the back of Zanardi's car, even from quite a long distance behind.
This is all about bravery now, that's about it. It's all about the slipstreaming and how brave can you be going into the corners. Where do you want to be? There goes Zanardi on the outside line. That, generally speaking, tends to be the preferred line, at least in turns 1 and 2. But last time around, Vasser made the move on the inside into turn 3, so different end of the racetracks, perhaps a different story.
Yeah, here comes Pruitt trying to get past De Ferran again. De Ferran's got a bit closer to the back of the Ganassi cars. De Ferran stays out fairly wide. He's got a wideish line through turns 3 and 4. I'm not sure whether Pruitt's going to get him until they come on the run down to turn number 1. Meanwhile, Zanardi leads. Vasser goes back to the outside. They swap places once again, and De Ferran on the outside in the battle for 3rd position as Scott Pruitt is through on the inside. 11 laps to go now, less than 11 laps to go. We're into the final charge here. Vasser with a little advantage stage now, and in fact De Ferran moves up into second position.
Yeah, 3 Honda engines at the front of the field, then a Ford of Scott Pruitt, Mercedes of Moore, and then Fords of Herder, Rahal, Andretti, Hearn, and Mercedes of Carpentier, and a Honda of Tracy. And they've almost done a whole lap by the time I've said that lot.
Jimmy Vasser's dad keeping a close. Oh, and there's an engine blow!
It's Gilles de Ferran.
For Gilles de Ferran, the Honda motor's given up, and there's only 10 laps to go. He's trying to get off the track. He's trying to get out of the way. The Walker crew just down below our commentary position can't believe it. They're throwing their tools down. They're so disappointed. Gilles was looking in such great shape here with the leaders, at least for a podium finish and a possible win. And the replay, there it went, and Zanardi must be relieved that he wasn't tucked in right behind him.
Yeah, and Scott Pruitt there flashes past the inside. Pruitt wasn't far behind Gilles de Ferran, and on a very similar line through that racetrack, so luckily there for Pruitt there was not a great deal of fluid put down, or if there was, he was able to drive through it. By the time he thought about it, of course, he was already through and gone and past. But a scary moment, I'm sure, for Scott Pruitt as he saw that engine erupt. And there is Derek Walker. Disappointment once again for Derek Walker.
Let's hear from him.
So close to winning this race. It must be crushing at this time.
Well, real disappointing, Gary. I mean, we played this thing right up to this point. We worked on the race all of the time. We're right in a position to do it. We could have got Vasser. Something's gone wrong. I don't know what it is, but we'll have to try another day. What can I say?
Thank you so much.
I have to say he's right too. The Goodyear tyres on that car, and he did seem to be closing up to those other two. He looked in absolutely perfect position.
Yeah, you know, all weekend they've had a great strategy. They didn't worry about qualifying. They came in here with a game plan. Rob Edwards is the technical director there. Bill Pappas is the race engineer who came with Gilles de Ferran from Hall Racing, and they've really gelled well. It's a great team. They said, let's forget about qualifying. That's not important at all. We'll spend all our time in practice working on the race setup, and then working towards these last few laps. It was all playing into their hands, and then it all goes wrong. Great disappointment, and a great team effort though. Real shame for Walker Racing. They've been winless now for a couple of years, and what have they got to do to win a race, Ben?
Yeah, you feel like that with Team Green as well, don't you? The problems that Tracy had earlier. He should have been up in this lead battle as well, but just doesn't seem to come together. Ganassi seems to be getting all of the luck that there is. Pappas coming into the pits. He's been given a black flag for blocking, apparently, which I don't quite know how he managed to do that, or out there when everyone's passing everybody left, right and centre.
Yes, good. He was a lap on his own in any case, so the penalty is fairly irrelevant. He was a couple of laps behind Art Myers in 16th place, and I think it's a bit more of a problem there for Max Pappas.
Yes, that's right. So he might have had a black flag, but I think it's a bit more serious than that. It looks as though it might be over for him. Sun still shining between the clouds, a little bit of cloud around above us. You can see the shadow of the helicopter. Let's look at this, two teammates just playing a little bit. The green flag is going to come out next time, apparently. Zanardi just drawing alongside Jimmy Vasser. Give him a little wave. How are you doing? All right, fine, thanks. And you could see Alex just flexing his fingers a moment ago. You know, the tension of holding onto the wheel for this length of time. They've been racing now for very nearly 3 hours. And it looks as though it's going to be another Ganassi win. Look at this list here. Michael Andretti, the winner of the opening race of the season, then Fernandez. But ever since then, except for one win for Greg Moore at Rio, and Zanardi very nearly won that one, it's been dominated by Team Target Chip Ganassi Racing.
Yeah, astonishing. They've had their slice of good fortunes in there. There have been a few lucky breaks for this team, but boy, have they taken advantage of those. And the point is that they've put themselves in a position to be able to win these races, and they've carried it off. Tremendous teamwork. And they are good buddies, but I think Zanardi pulling alongside. They're trying to outpsych Jimmy Vasser. I don't think that'll worry Jimmy Vasser one iota. No. He is focused on winning this race. He's obviously got a pretty good car, and so is Alex Zanardi, of course. But let's not count out these guys behind. Scott Pruitt, Greg Moore, Bobby Rahal. He's running well here, the veteran. His final year, Rahal's last ride. He'd love to go out with a win, and no better place than here. He's won races here before at Michigan Speedway, but not a 500 miler.
Now then, are we going to see the pace car pulling off up here, or are we going to see one more lap? I think the lights are still on the pace car, so that would indicate that they've got another lap to follow before they actually go green, and that would mean that they've got 5 laps to go then. 5 laps of racing to take us through to the checkered flag, and let's hope that it's 5 clean laps, that we don't get any more situations, engine blow-ups, incidents, whatever else.
Yeah, really. With yesterday's race, the Indy Lights race, it was a spectacular race, but a big crash on the back straight with just 3 laps to go, and that race finished, under caution. It was an anticlimax, but it was such a sensational race that no one really mattered. But it would be lovely to see this race go these final 5 laps. We're coming up to complete lap 244. And if the pace car pulls off around next time, they'll have done 245 and just 5 laps to go. 10 miles for the shootout and $100,000 on the line for these guys. Of course, the Mile for Pole Award will not be won again, so that another $15,000 will go on to the top of the bonus next week, taking over $300,000.
Yeah, to Mid-Ohio, where the chances of winning from pole have to be fairly high, don't they? You tend to regularly get a win from pole at the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, one of the classic racetracks on the calendar. Alex Zanardi saying in the press conference the other day that he reckons it's probably the most demanding track in America to actually get one really good lap in qualifying. The ultimate lap is probably harder at Mid-Ohio than anywhere else. Now then, let's not think about Mid-Ohio. We've got to concentrate on this race, because this race will get started again on the backstretch, because that's when they will go for it. Now then, Vassar will determine the timing of accelerating away. Zanardi will try and stay with him, but it's all too easy to get caught out.
Yeah, the last couple of laps, it's been Alex Zanardi who has led the field up to the green flag. This time it's Jimmy Vassar. He has to wait for the pace car to get out of the way, and then he gets on the throttle fairly early onto the throttle, halfway down the back straight, even if that. And Jimmy Vassar, a very good jump there, and Zanardi behind him, and then there's 2 cars very close behind Scott Pruitt and Greg Moore, and right behind Greg Moore there is Bobby Rahal.
Yeah, so Vassar with the brake, but can Zanardi use the toe? Here he comes. He didn't get much of a break, and Zanardi's already picked up the toe, and he moves to the outside. 5 laps to go then to the win of this US 500. They both won this race in the last 2 years. Vassar won it in '96. Zanardi won it last year. They both went on to win the championship each respective season that they won this race. But which one of them is going to do it? Or could we see a surprise? Are we going to see Scott Pruitt and Greg Moore suddenly come from behind and snatch the victory? 4 laps to go this time.
And 3 different engine manufacturers. Honda in the first 2, then Ford, then Mercedes. And all 3 manufacturers in the hunt here with just 4 laps to go.
Jimmy Vassar goes to the outside. Vassar takes the lead again. Zanardi's down on the inside. Slipstreaming past one another. Who will want to lead onto the last lap? Well, I shouldn't think anybody will want to lead onto the last lap. Zanardi now to be slipstreamed by Greg Moore. It's all too easy to go from a lead position to find yourself in 4th or 5th position. Zanardi tries to stay around the outside of Moore. There's a little puff of smoke from the back of Zanardi's car. It looks as though to me there could be a little bit of smoke from the rear CV, a bit like we saw on Ribero's car. Let's hope it holds out. Just 3 more laps to go. And again the slipstream picks up. Again Zanardi tries to get into 2nd place. Moore trying to go around the outside. Again that little puff of smoke from the back of Zanardi's car. I think he's got a problem, but whether it will slow him down or not, that's another issue. And now Moore's going to take the lead from Jimmy Vassar.
There he goes into turn 3 down the inside. Greg Moore takes away the lead from Jimmy Vassar. 2 laps to go this time around. Let me just tell you that Brian Herder is off the pace at the back of this pack, but here is a battle for the lead. 4 cars absolutely nose to tail.
2 laps to go then, and it's Greg Moore up front. Scott Pruitt's getting involved, and the 2 Ganassi cars trying to work together to get past Greg Moore. It's Jimmy Vassar who's gone back in front now as we go on board with Scott Pruitt in 4th position. It looks as though it's going to come between these 4. Greg Moore is in great shape though as he tries to get down the inside of Jimmy Vassar. This will be the white flag. There'll just be 1 more lap to go as they come round this time. Vassar with the advantage. Greg Moore is in 2nd. Alex Zanardi is in 3rd as they head down towards turn 1. Zanardi goes to the outside. Moore goes to the inside. Zanardi trying to follow round as they're both on the edge. It's Moore who's got in front. Now has he got enough to hold on the last 2 miles? They're heading up the backstretch into turn number 3 for the last time. Moore with the advantage. Now's the time for the final slipstream. Zanardi tries to close up. Vassar tries to close up, but I don't think they're going to get Moore. I think Greg Moore is going to take it. They come round to take the checkered flag and the battle for 2nd, but it's Moore. It's Greg Moore who wins it. Vassar and Zanardi go through 2nd and 3rd, and Zanardi,
for some reason Greg Moore's car has disappeared off the scoring charts, but Greg Moore won that race, and Zanardi by 0.008 seconds was given 2nd place. The scoring is showing Jimmy Vassar the winner. That emphatically is not the place. A sensational finish by those 2 Target Jim Ganassi cars, but ahead of them both, and receiving applaudits there from Alex Zanardi is Greg Moore, his 2nd win of the season.
Brilliant. brilliant performance from Greg Moore. How about that? We thought it was going to be Ganassi's 7th win in a row, but Greg Moore timed it to perfection. He kept quiet about his pace. Look at that battle across the line. And, well, did Vassar get it, or did Zanardi
well,
get
they're saying that Vassar got it by .008, but whoever was on the inside, I couldn't actually see who it was on the inside, but it must have been Jimmy Vassar. That's what the timing is saying. And what a fantastic finish.
Amazing. Well, I think that Vassar may have got second in the end. Our timing and scoring's not working on this.
It's showing that. It's showing Vassar ahead by .008. It was certainly awfully close. And there is Greg Moore pulling into victory lane. And Billy Camphouse and the car division, the first to offer his congratulations and help undo all the paraphernalia for Greg Moore.
He had more than his share.
Well, what an amazing race. Let's hope we get a chance to hear from Greg Moore as he clambers out of the car.
A picture is worth 10,000 words. This is an entire novel in victory lane right now. Well, Greg Moore taking his earpieces out, getting ready to get started here on what has to be a very emotional victory lane for you. The camera is over this way, Greg, and after a great start of a season, more than your share of problems, now you've battled back. Jerry Forsythe and company, they're going to congratulate you now, but I want to talk about those last couple of laps. That was intense.
Wow. That's what all I can say, thanks. Oh, just the players, guys, gave me great pit stops all day. I mean, we stalled the car twice in the pits. We had a bit of a mechanical or electronic problem there, but we bounced back from it. We knew we had a good car. It was just a question there right at the end. You know, both the Ganassi cars were awfully fast, but we just managed to get them on that last lap going into one.
You know, everybody says, and you've heard it, I know many times, that patience is so important with a 500-mile race. How much patience did you have to practice today?
None. It was flat out from the beginning to the end. I mean, you know, we knew that the Mercedes would be, you know, reliable enough. It's just a question of, could we get the brakes? And we got the brakes today, and I'm just so pleased for all these guys. I mean,
well, it's a very happy victory lane, but there was a photo finish, Gary Gerald, for second place.
And the man who ended up second was Jimmy Vassar. Jimmy, tell me about that last couple of laps and the emotion you're experiencing right now.
Well, it was a good race, a lot of fun. You know, I hate to come second like that, but it's, you know, it was a fantastic race. Greg Moore did a good job. I had to give him a little room there. You know, he got underneath me. I just led the wrong lap, I guess.
Was there any strategy?
Well, not when you got a couple to go, and you know, it seemed like I could pass somebody and pull out a bit, but you know, they just came flying right back up on me. I must have had 10 car lengths when they, you know, we might have had a little problem with something, because when I got out by myself, I couldn't pull you know, over 1,000 less revs than I should. So, you know, I think it might have been something a little wrong with the top end speed.
All right, we'll hear from his teammate, Jan.
Well, Alex Zanardi, when he got out of the car, he wanted to clear the way because he was told the car is on fire. I believe, were you talking to your wife there?
Yeah, she's been watching. She told me good job.
When you saw the smoke, or did you know the car was smoking and made a decision to stand on it as opposing to lifting?
What can you do about it? There's no difference in this place. It's not that you can ease and say, I hang in there and let the engine have a break. I mean, you flat out all the way. So it's a 50-50.
Well, it stayed together. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So Alex Zanardi finishes third. His run of victories is broken by Greg Moore. A tremendous win here at the Michigan Speedway. We've witnessed one of the most remarkable races of recent years here at the Michigan Speedway. The US 500 of 1998, employing a new rear wing to change the racing, to slow the cars down, has provided one of the most exciting races I think I've ever seen, and a win at the end of the day for Greg Moore. A brilliant win for Moore, and a Mercedes-Benz win as well, and they will be mighty happy about that. They've had a tough time in the mid part of this season. Jimmy Vassar second, Alex Zanardi third, Scott Pruitt in fourth. Good result for Richie Hearn, his best result ever again in fifth. And Michael Andretti surviving to finish sixth in spite of losing time with penalties in the pits. Bobby Rahal seventh, Patrick Carpentier eighth. 8th. Paul Tracy disappointed 9th. He could have been in that lead group. Brian Herter 10th, then Tony Kanaan 11th, and Helio Castroneves, the two rookies, both scoring points here today.
Yeah, good effort by those two. And then farther down the field there is Mauricio Guzman, Art Meyer, a good run with the Lola there. Alex Barron, a few laps down there in the fastest of All-American, the All-American Racers car to finish. Then the non-finishers, Gilles de Ferran, Mark Blundell, Michel Jourdain Jr. And farther back down, there is Max Papis, JJ Leto, Dario Franchitti, Alan Sir Jr., Adrian Fernandez, who had such a good run going there, as of course is Alan Sir Jr., PJ Jones, a non-finisher, and towards the end of the field there, Christian Fittipaldi, Dennis Vitolo, Robbie Gordon and Andre Ribeiro all out of this race. But what a motor race that was.
It was just absolutely remarkable, and brilliant drive there from Greg Moore. I sort of get the feeling that he waited. He didn't really show his hand until right at the end, and I think that was a pretty clever piece of driving and a brilliantly aggressive piece of racing at the end, as we've seen in the past. There are the points, and just look at that advantage. Alex Zanardi, 190 points. Jimmy Vasser, okay, it's slightly close, but really not much difference. And there's a good battle between Vasser and Moore for that second place. Michael Andretti into a clearer 4th position now.
Yeah, he's moved up well after a very disappointing sequence of results. He knows he had a good car today. He was only 1.3 seconds behind the winner. He was in 6th position. But farther on down there, Brian Herter, his engine was sick at the end of the day here. And the top rookie in 11th place there is Tony Kanaan.
Yes, 11th place overall for the top rookie at the moment, as we see the top 3 down there on the podium. And although Ganassi might not have won this race, it's still remarkable performance to get both their drivers on the podium at the end of a 500-mile race. Again, tremendous reliability.
Yeah, astonishing. And Greg Moore there on the phone as well. The cell phones here get in their use. And he really needed this victory. He's had a very disappointing sequence of races here. He's lost a lot of ground in the championship to Alex Zanardi. Was ahead of him, of course, not that long ago, but now more than 60 points behind, 70 points behind, and a great effort by Greg Moore this afternoon.
Well, let's take a look back over some of the action this afternoon. Try to remember what's been going on. There's been so much going on. It's been